You're listening to The Topcast, the original podcast for growth-minded instrumental music and voice teachers since 2015, with your host, Tim Topham. Our mission at Top Music is to empower instrumental music and voice teachers to find and nurture their innate creativity so that they can teach lessons that are innovative, integrated, and inspiring, and that will have a positive, lifelong impact on their students. Join us each week as we interview teachers and creators from around the world and unpack fun and exciting ideas to maximize your teaching and studio business success. Welcome back to the Topcast. I'm your host, Tim Topham, and thank you so much for spending some time with me again this week. It means a lot to me, and I really hope you are enjoying the show. This week, I hope to help you become maybe a little bit more productive, a little bit more organized, or a little bit less disorganized and fractured in the way that you go about storing things. And I'm talking about notes and apps and all of those things that we tend to have in all sorts of different places. We've got stuff over here in Dropbox and stuff in Google Drive, and then we've got an app for that and my music stuff over here, and then our bookkeeping stuff. And it's just everywhere, isn't it? And this is really, really common. And if you're not someone who's as digital as all of that, maybe you've got a shelf over here for that, and you've got a shoebox over there for your receipts, and then you've got piles of music on the piano, and you've just got things everywhere. So today, let's take a deep breath and find out what we can actually do to help and simplify and streamline our organization, and therefore increase our productivity. We're going to be hanging out with two repeat guests that have been on the show before, and guests that will be very well known to most of you, I'm sure. The amazing Amy Chaplin and also Joy Morin. Amy is a pianist, teacher, speaker, blogger, and podcaster. She loves supporting teachers on all things related to teaching, organisation, productivity, and life on the Piano Pantry blog and podcast, and via her small group digital organisation coaching. Amy has enjoyed serving the profession in a variety of ways since 2009, currently serving as a trustee of the Indiana Music Teachers Association. Besides operating her independent piano studio in Northeast Indiana, Amy enjoys cooking. She's a fabulous cook. Reading and traveling with her husband. My second guest today is Joy Morin. Joy is a pianist, teacher, speaker, composer, and lifelong learner based near Ann Arbor, Michigan. She hosts an annual retreat for piano teachers. That's at pianoteacherretreat.com if you're interested, and shares articles and resources on her blog, colorinmypiano.com. Joy currently serves as secretary for the Gordon Institute for Music Learning and on the Committee for Young Musicians for the National Conference on Keyboard Pedagogy. And if the Gordon Institute sounds vaguely familiar, but you're not sure, if you've ever heard of me talking about Edwin Gordon and music learning theory, then that's what Joy is helping serve as the secretary of. Well, welcome back to the show, Amy and Joy. So great to connect with you again.
Great to be here.
Thanks for having us.
So Joy, you were in episode, I went back through the archives. You came on episode 14. 14. That must have been 2000. That was 10 years ago. That's just amazing. And Amy, you were definitely on episode 372, which wasn't long ago, but were you on an earlier one as well?
Nope. I was just joking with Joy that when we recorded 372, you were like, surely you were on? I was like, no, this was the first one.
Which was terrible of me. Well, how remiss to have not had you on sooner. But what you did do for us, which was amazing in those early days, was you gave us an incredible webinar on marketing. Still remember it. I can still picture it. You're an absolute rock star. That was probably 8 years ago as well. My goodness, I'm getting old.
Yeah, that was one of my first steps into professional presenting life too. So it was a great opportunity.
Yeah, That's right. And now you're teaching other people in those workshops about how to actually put in a workshop proposal, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yep. How to present, how to make proposals.
That's so good. And that is so needed. So I'm really glad you've been doing that. But look, we're not talking about that today. This is a great opportunity for us to catch up, but I won't waste all the listeners' time on us having a bit of a yarn about our past. What we're talking about today is actually Notion, which I looked up, and in my exploration, I call it a productivity software tool. So maybe I've got that wrong and you guys can correct me, but before we dive in, why don't we define productivity, especially in terms of independent music teachers listening?
Sure. Yeah. I think when I think of productivity, I mean, I think a typical definition is about looking at your efficiency of getting work done. I think that's definitely true. I think for me personally, sometimes I feel I get tired of hearing all about like the hustle and the grind, and we've got to be more efficient and everything. And I like to also remember in my own personal life, of course, that I want to also be taking the time to enjoy life and, enjoy the beautiful sunshine and notice the beautiful flowers, or just, take a moment to enjoy some silence and just be, in my life. Productivity is, I think, us looking at when we are getting work done. So I guess that's kind of how I like to think about it in my mind. And how are we getting work done? And it's, I think, not just only about being efficient with our time, but it's getting work done in the way that we want to and being who we want to when we're getting work done. So anyway, and how in terms of independent music teachers, how that might look, the kinds of tasks that we work on as independent music teachers could be, planning for our students, looking for repertoire, prepping for our lessons, running the business side of our teaching, and all that comes with that, the bookkeeping and record keeping and things like that. So those are the kinds of tasks that I picture when it comes to productivity with music teachers.
Yeah, and all of that alongside managing your own family and making sure you've got time for your friends and getting to out and about. I'm glad you mentioned that sort of hustle and grind mentality. I don't think that's all that popular in our sphere, and I'm glad it's not. But what we are talking about is we all have limited time. So how can we make the most use of it? How can we get more of that by being as productive as we can? So why do you guys feel that apps can help us be more productive?
As Joy was saying, I also, even though I'm known for organization and productivity in a way,
you are the queen of organization and productivity, Amy.
I think about myself more as organization, I guess, and not so much productivity, because I feel like when we're organized and we approach things with intention in a certain manner, it can help us be productive without necessarily going at it with the intention of like, I have to be more productive, if that makes sense. Which I think puts a weight on our shoulders when we try to approach things in that way of I have to do more and be more and get more done. So I think the first thing about using apps is, first of all, just being mindful and more aware of what actually the goal is. Like, what are we trying to accomplish and why are you wanting to use a certain app? Being aware of like what's working for you, what's not working for you, and like maybe not just going to something because someone else tells you to do it, but seeking out if you actually have a reason behind that, if you actually need that to help you in your work life. So apps aren't necessarily about being more productive. It's about supporting us in the way that we work so that we can work more smartly, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's the same with apps for teaching as well. I think some teachers think they feel they should be using a game, or everyone's talking about this, so I should just use it. When really the first step is to step back and go, why? What is the point of this activity or this game? And how is this app or this iPad or whatever it is going to help me get there? Is it going to help me get there? Is it the best option? Maybe not. And it's the same with apps like you're talking about. So you were previously focused on Evernote, and we should ask you about that in a second. But firstly, you are both big converts to an app called Notion. So tell me about Notion.
Sure. So Notion is an online platform. It can be accessed on the internet using just any internet browser, or it can be accessed via an app on your device or on your computer. And it's a program that allows you to create a series of pages. And these pages are very customizable. You can simply start typing text in, or you can start putting in like headings and create sections on your page and kind of organize it that way. And there's also a whole variety of different block types that you can use beyond text. So you can really start embedding things, images, links to other pages in Notion, or links to things outside of Notion, anything that might be on the internet. So it's very customizable. It's also very easy to use. I would say that if you can use Microsoft Word, you can learn to use Notion as well. Some of those block types that I mentioned earlier are more powerful and more advanced. So as you get comfortable with Notion, you can start using some of the other block types. One of the big ones that is really fun to get to know is called databases. And if you're not familiar with what a database is, I like to think of it as basically a spreadsheet on steroids. So if you can use a spreadsheet, such as in Microsoft, Google Sheets or in Microsoft, then you can probably learn how to use databases in Notion. So anyway, that's a little bit of a description of what Notion is, and people are using Notion for all kinds of things. Like I said, it's very customizable. So anything you can dream up involving note-taking or different kinds of tasks or writing that you need to do, things you want to save for later. And we'll get into some examples very soon that will show how you can use Notion in your personal or professional life.
That's great. I might actually bring up Evernote now because I remember Evernote because I used to use it as well. And it was kind of like a virtual shelf with folders and binders in it. Am I right, Amy?
Yeah, I always thought of it as like a digital filing cabinet. And also, I kind of always pictured Evernote even a little bit like email, as in just like the format and the way that it looked. You had all of these notes that just looks like emails that have come in. And then when you click on that note, you can preview what's inside of that note, just like you can preview an email. And then you could tag those notes, which in Gmail, it's just called labeling. And it just kind of has this kind of similar feeling to it.
I'm really interested in why you shifted from Evernote, because you weren't just a user, you weren't just a power user. I think you went and did their training, didn't you? You were like accredited. So tell us, what made you change, and what's the advantage of Notion over some of these other apps?
Well, so in the early days, I was really big on Evernote because I loved that you could take it and you could do lots of things with it. You could have images in it, you could save PDFs, you could link to Google Drive, you could, make a note spiffy with Microsoft tools like bolds and, formatting tools and things like that. And you could make notes appear any place in Evernote by just tagging them in multiple locations. So I used it a lot for managing my students, their repertoire lists, ideas, notes from students, evaluations, all kinds of stuff like that. And, the thing about Evernote and even Notion is that they can do a lot of different things, like talk to Google Drive, but they're not completely replacing these things. Early in my days of doing Evernote training stuff, I had someone go, oh, so I could start just managing my files in Evernote. No. It's not a file manager. It can house files, but it's more about making multiple programs talk to each other and having different formats all be available. Yeah, so I used Evernote for a long time. I did their community program, which basically meant that it proved that I knew enough about Evernote that I could talk to other people about it and train other people to use it. And so I did a 3-part series on my Piano Pantry blog on how to use Evernote as an independent music teacher. It was a video series, not a course, but just a free video that people could look at how to use it. Yeah, so I was using it for, I don't know, 8 years. I should look back when I started, but it was forever. And I was starting to feel like after a while, it was just starting to feel heavy. I didn't quite recognize that, like mentally. It was one of those things that after the fact, I look back and go, yeah, I was not feeling great about this, but I wasn't really sure what, another option was. And I wasn't at the point where I was ready to look for something new. Now, Evernote came out with like a homepage where you could try to organize it a little bit more and have like a landing page. And I just didn't super love that. But that was kind of the first step towards me realizing what I needed something different than what it was. I didn't want just like a big list of notes. I needed more structure, a happier way of organizing, basically. So I have to share, there's a couple of quotes, and I use this in one of the blog posts that I wrote on my whole transition out of Evernote and into Notion. I don't know if you've ever read Adam Grant's book, Originals, Tim. No? Okay. So he has a couple quotes that just speak really well to this and just my overall philosophy of productivity and time management and organization in general. He says, the hallmark of originality is rejecting the default and exploring whether a better option exists. And then he also says, most of us take pride in our knowledge and expertise and in staying true to our beliefs and opinions. That makes sense in a stable world where we get rewarded for having conviction in our ideas. But the problem is that we live in a rapidly changing world where we need to spend as much time rethinking as we do thinking. And I think both of these just speak really well, even though he's talking about, opinions and stuff like that. But it speaks to what it looks like to seek out something that works better for us and how we work in our daily lives, and not just taking the default or not just always doing it the way that we've always done it. So Joy is actually the one that got me into Evernote, or into Notion, I mean.
Got it. I think Notion probably didn't exist when Evernote has been around for a long time. I mean, so sometimes we get embedded in a software and then a newer version comes along and it actually could be better for us. But there's a big hurdle to get over, isn't there, in changeover? There's a fatigue and you've got to invest time to learn the new platform, time to shift all your things over. Was there an easy shift for you, just quickly moving across, like an export tool or anything like that?
That's a great question. So at first, it was a slow move. I mean, I probably had 3,000, maybe even 4,000 notes in Evernote. And once I started dabbling in it, I started just moving like one thing at a time. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, like when we're trying new things, is we don't have to always just jump full force. Like we can kind of explore, get our feet wet, and then move our way in as we're ready. And that's what I did. Like I spent, probably a good couple of years, maybe even 3 years, moving just a little bit of myself into Notion at a time. And I left Evernote as kind of just a dumping grounds of like articles and things that I might want to reference someday, but I wasn't really it wasn't anything that was managing my daily life necessarily. And then all of a sudden I was annoyed by Evernote asking me to upgrade all the time. And I was like, I'm making the move. So I finished importing Evernote, and it's so simple. Notion, you just connect it to your Evernote account and it will just import it into a database. And like everything's just kind of dumped into one database. And then I can easily search and find anything that I want to out of it. And then from there, reorganize it in Notion as I go. So it felt really good to like work my way into it slowly. And then when it was time, I just was ready. I was like, now everything is going in there. So it was a pretty smooth process. And I do have a blog post that kind of walks through some of the stuff I went through. If anybody's actually interested in that move, that might be helpful. So
yeah, because I imagine there will be people listening who have followed some of your research and thoughts on Evernote before and are like, oh, okay, well, how do I do the same move? So can link to that in our show notes. So Joy, it sounds like you were the Notion finder. So were you intentionally looking for something new, and what got you into that? And then shortly, we're also going to talk about some practical ideas about how this can be used.
Yeah, so I always kind of had an interest in different kinds of apps like this, productivity apps, note-taking apps, anything kind of in that vein. And so I generally tend to try to stay up on what's new, what's out there, and I like to try them out. So I'm just kind of a nerd in that space. And I think, Notion actually has been around for quite some time, but in the early days, I wasn't very impressed with it. And then somehow, some years later, it came across my radar again. And I don't remember if it was some article I came across or what, but when I came back to it and looked at it, I was like, oh, wow, this is very cool. This is very different. And it really stood out to me as something different from other apps and online platforms out there. So it caught my eye, and I just kind of started playing around with it and watching a few YouTube tutorials and things like that, and started to really get into it and kind of creating my own workspace, basically a place where I can keep things and get my work done, writing that I need to do, referencing information, all that kind of thing. And then I started telling my friends about it. So I looped Amy in and was like, hey, you really need to check out Notion.
And is it different to just thinking about this really simply? We all have a notes app on our phone, which is getting better and better, but it's pretty clunky. Would I be right in saying Notion is like that, but incredibly more effective, detailed? You can do much more with it, but at heart, it's a place to store notes, kind of? Or am I simplifying it too much?
No, I think that's a great starting point for Notion for sure. It can do exactly what your basic note-taking app can do on your phone. And then much more, over time you can kind of learn it more and develop it from there. But it absolutely works as simply as that.
Okay. And this is different from the apps like Trello and Monday and Asana, which are project management tools, right?
Yes. So some of those apps, those are among some of them that I've tried out. So Asana and Monday in particular are definitely project management tools is what I would say, or task management kinds of apps. And the way that they're designed is that they function in a pretty specific way. The way that you would have a project you might be working on with some subtasks, and then there's a certain way it's designed that you would check mark them off or whatever. So every program has its own way that it works. But and then Trello, just to bring up Trello, I think I do really like Trello. That one I think is a little bit more flexible in my mind. I've seen a lot of creative ways that people use Trello. If you're not familiar with Trello, it basically is a series of boards, they call them. So visually picture just kind of like a rectangle, and then you can put various items on that board. Yeah. And organize it the way that you want to. And there's different things you can do with it. And Trello is based around Kanban boards, if anyone's ever heard of that, which is something that came out of the Toyota company, is their way of tracking efficiency and so on. So that's something that you can Google. If you haven't heard of that, you can look into that. But I will say, so if you are a Trello user, if you're a fan of using Kanban boards in some way, Notion has all of that functionality built into it. So you can create Kanban boards. You can do all the same things that you can do in Trello in Notion if you want to. So I think overall, the big answer to that is Notion is it does a lot of the same things that other programs can do. It's just that Notion is so flexible. It's so customizable. So you can really create pages that accomplish what you want them to in the way that you want to. In fact, I'll even go as far as to say it's almost like being able to design your own like app or your own software. Almost like you can create a page that accomplishes what you want it to. You set it up and you can use it the way that you want, rather than go finding some third-party app or software that does the task the way you want it done.
Well, and I'll just throw in here too, Joy, piggybacking off of that, they have a feature now where you can publish your pages like a web page, basically. So you can make pages live for people to view on the internet, basically. So yeah, just a lot of really cool things.
Well, I can certainly say that you two have done your research. So listeners out there, if you don't need to go through and try all these software yourself, these guys have already done it, and Notion has come out on top, which is great. So tell us about some ways that you're using Notion, both in your professional and your personal life.
Sure. So I'll give a few examples of ways that Amy and I both happen to use for our professional life as independent music teachers. So one of my favorite ways to use Notion is having a page for planning my studio recitals. And so anything related to planning that event. So, I can keep track of things that I need to get in place as far as booking the venue and what details have been confirmed, the time and setup details. Creating like a packing list. What do I need to bring for the recital? And that packing list, I can kind of refer to my list from last year, and then I can edit it the next year. Let's say planning the repertoire that my students will play. So you can use a database, basically a spreadsheet, to input all your students' information. And so all of these things I'm describing, anything related to the recital, could be on one page, all in one place. And it could be laid out exactly the way you want it to. You can almost picture it almost like a website page in a way, but you can keep that page private, of course, in your own Notion account. Another example would be dealing with inquiries that might be coming in from potential students. So there is a feature in Notion where you can create a form. So you can have your students from your website fill out a form, and it'll all get input into a database in Notion, and you can view it on the back end in your account in Notion and sort it in different ways. You could keep track of the inquiries that you have followed up on, and what, did they come for an interview lesson? What was the outcome? You could kind of manage your inquiries that way. You can also manage your contact information coming in from your students. So if you have your students who do decide to sign up for lessons with you, if you have them fill out some kind of a form with their address and contact details and so on, you could have all of that customized exactly the way you want to see it laid out, on a page. Another good example would be having repertoire lists. So if you have a favorite repertoire that you like to teach, you could have a really beautiful spreadsheet with that information. I use it for all sorts of projects, basically any kind of project that I might be doing in my studio with my students, even just professional development learning for myself. So if I'm taking some kind of online course, I have a page in my Notion account that I call Learning. And basically it allows me to see all the different courses that I am taking or have taken in the past. And I can keep notes relating to each one and keep track of even my login information and things like that. So those are some examples of how it might relate specifically for music professionals.
And I'll share a few just professional related and then also personal things. And again, Joy and I have a lot of overlap. We use a lot of similar things in this. So I use it for my podcast planning. All of my episodes, I dump ideas. I've got a whole database for all of my podcast episodes. And the cool thing, the databases are actually while you can think of them similar to spreadsheets, they're actually quite more powerful. So I can kind of filter and I can see all of my podcast episodes in one go if I wanted to. Or I could set up a view where I only view podcast episodes that were published in, say, 2022. Or I can set up a view where I only look at podcast ideas, where I just want to scroll through and see like what's some things that I want to do upcoming. So you can really filter through things really easily in different looks. So I do podcast planning. I do social media scheduling. So I have an assistant, one of my former piano students, that does a little work for me on the side, just planning out social media things. And so I have a database that you can turn into a calendar view. So it looks literally like a calendar. And I just put what is going to be scheduled, say for the week. And then I tag her in it. And then I put whether it's tentative or ready. And then when she finishes it, she marks it complete. So we can kind of communicate that way without ever having to talk to each other, basically. I use it for email newsletter planning, again, project management, simple to-do lists. So it's just like a recital preparation checklist, like do this in the first month, do this 2 months out, 2 weeks out. Conference trip planning, just did you register? Keeping a checklist of what I've actually, done planning for conferences. Because it's so easy to forget. Did I book the hotel? Did I register? Did I talk to this person? Little things like that. And then personal wise, I use it for travel planning. So my husband and he also has a Notion account, and I make my travel page editable by him, similar to like giving someone access in like Google Drive where he can edit it. And then we can both add stuff to our planning list for our trips. I manage my reading list in Notion. So like similar to the podcast planning, I can filter books that are on my backlog, or books that I read in 2024, books that I'm currently reading in 2025. What's in the last one? Christmas list. So just like gift ideas and things like that. So many things that you can do with it. I know Joy and I both have gotten to the point where we can say confidently that we do 90% of our life in business management in Notion. Will it ever be 100%? No, but that's okay because it's not meant to be 100%. Again, I still have Google Drive. I still use email. I still actually have a basic Todoist. I use a Todoist app for more like ongoing life tasks and things like that. So I still use other things, but almost everything is now in Notion. It's so cool.
I was going to ask if you've both opened your Notes app recently, or if that's
what Notes app?
Yeah, that makes sense.
No, just to add on to what Amy's describing, like it really is interesting how Notion can kind of bring a lot of areas of your life under one umbrella, and I think that's really what makes it shine. And just in case people are starting to feel like this sounds like a commercial for Notion, I want you to know that Notion is not the only app that is starting to do this. Notion does have some competitors, and so you can look up Notion alternatives if you want to hear some of the other ones. But I think this idea, I don't think this type of app is going away, is basically what I want to say. And so being aware of what a tool like this can do for you, I think is worthwhile. And I think it is something that will change the way that we work, which is really interesting to think about. And it kind of, Amy and I have both talked about how we feel less scattered, like, oh, I have to go find this in Google Docs. And oh, where's that? That's over in a Microsoft Word document on a file on my computer somewhere. And this is over, here and there. And so the nice thing about Notion is you can create ways to keep everything relating to a certain project or a certain life area or a certain whatever it is in one place. And you can always link out to a Google Doc if it needs to be in a Google Doc. But then you've got a handy link and you know where it's at because it's organized. So there's a Forbes article that came out about a year ago now, last spring, that talks all about Notion as a company. It's a really interesting article, and maybe we can link to it in the show notes. But they refer to Notion as an everything app, which is kind of an interesting way of thinking about Notion and similar apps. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of throw that out there as just a broader view of what Notion is. And it's not just all about Notion, but Amy and I happen to be fans of Notion.
Well, and they keep doing more. I mean, they now they have a calendar, and like we're really excited to see how that goes. Like a calendar where you can actually like make your availability known to people, like Calendly, basically, where you say, here's some, time slots, and you send it to a person. And so it's just like there's always these new things happening, and it's really exciting to see them starting to include even more things like a calendar. So
they've
who
also,
knows?
yeah, they've just started rolling out, so the Notion calendar app Amy mentioned is a separate app, and they've just started rolling out a separate Notion mail app as well, which is really interesting. And then I'm sure we're all been hearing a lot about AI, and of course there's an add-on feature for Notion that you can add AI features into your Notion account, so you can have it do editing for you, you can have it do writing for you, it can answer questions for you, all those kinds of things.
I was just on their site, notion.com, and it looks like you can start with a free trial as well, like an ongoing. It's a freemium service, so you can use it for free at a certain level as much as you want. And then it's about $10 per month by the looks of things, just for one person team.
Well, for most teachers, they're going to be free. I mean, we both had free forever. There's so much space that's available. Like most people aren't going to need it to upgrade at all. It's only till you get to the point where you want to share with more people. Like you want to have more than like 8 people that you connect to it or something, or like have access to certain features like their charts, which is a particular view on the database. And I started doing that when I had my books database, and I've got this beautiful books management page, and I have a beautiful chart that shows how many books I've read for the year. And so I like, I'm ready to pay for Notion. Like it's so, Enjoy's the same way. Like we don't mind paying for it because it is doing so much for us. So.
Well, I was just thinking it would be so good if you guys put together a course so we could actually watch you use this app. Like, how do we get help from you? And you are actually doing this. You are offering some training for teachers on this. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So I think, we had both been using it I think I've been using it 3 years, Joy, maybe 4 or 5. And we just were like, this is helping us so much. Like we were just so excited about it. We're like, we're ready to share this with the teacher world and our teaching community. So we last year put together a workshop. It started as a 2-day workshop, but we realized that spreading it out a little bit more just gave us more space. And so it's now a 3-day workshop, and it's beautiful. It's 2 hours a day, perfect amount of time to focus, to learn a little bit. And then each week we build on it a little bit. So we start very progressively, understanding just the very basic structure of Notion, giving you examples of what it can look like, moving into a little bit, some of the more different types of blocks. So we don't just like dump it all on you at once. We give you kind of step-by-step progress so you can see how you can do a little bit more with it. And it's as much as you want. So that's the beautiful thing about Notion. It's so customizable. You could keep it as simple as you wanted and just make it look like a notes app with just basic notes. Or you could beautify it into something that looks like an actual web page or have all these databases. So it has so much capability. Yeah, so we try to make it so it just feels like it's baby steps for you and you don't have to just try to learn it on your own. So we're getting ready for the 4th round of the workshop. I think 4th. Yeah, we did 2 last year, I think, and then just finished one in January. So May 7th, 14th, and 21st, 2025. It's 3 Wednesdays in a row in May. And then we have a bonus session. So we have like just a couple different packages. And the bonus session is on Wednesday, June 4th, 2025. And they're all from 12:30 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. So we do have a wait list. If you're interested, you can get notified like when it's coming up. So that is just pianopantry.com/Notion wait, all in one word.
Notion wait. Great. We'll put that link in the show notes. It sounds so useful. I'm actually going to consider joining up myself for sure. I think it sounds great. Obviously, we can all learn from this. Why should, though, I'm just thinking, there's probably a million YouTube videos about Notion. Why should teachers join your workshop versus just, trying to learn it themselves?
Teachers definitely can just learn it themselves. And yes, there are lots of YouTube videos out there that you can watch and follow. But if you're someone who, rather than having to watch videos, if you'd rather have someone just kind of show you, then our workshop might be for you. If you start looking around in Notion and you're kind of getting there, but you're interested in some of the fancier, more powerful features that Amy and I have talked about, or maybe if you start exploring there's a lot of free templates that you can find for Notion, by the way, and bring those into your account. And so if you're looking at some of these templates and you're going, wow, that's really cool. I wish I knew how to create similar things, or, and get into some of the more advanced skills, then our workshop might be for you. So we really, have tried to take what we have learned over, a handful of years with using Notion and figure out a way to teach others how to learn those same skills. So we think that we really help teachers get jump started with Notion. And then finally, I think also in our workshop, Amy and I have really kind of formed a philosophy about like what's a great way to set up your Notion pages so that they're really organized well and they really work well, especially for music professionals in particular. So we take what we've done in Notion successfully and have found works for us, and we really try to help you get set up in a very similar way. Of course, allowing you the chance to customize it for your own preferences and the way that you think.
Well, and just to piggyback off of that, like we've had teachers take the workshop that have watched YouTube videos. And what, I hear people saying is, I can watch the videos, but Notion is so customizable. You can let it get like, it can just be anything. And we take it and we show them like what it could look like and give you a structure that helps you kind of get started without having to figure out that structure yourself. So, and I think a lot of teachers, like I said, that have watched YouTube videos feel like you need more than that.
Yeah, it reminds me of when I started using software called ActiveCampaign, which, if you've ever received an email from me, is the software I use to send out all my emails. And one of the things that I learned through training was to have a system, a taxonomy for tags, because tags is a way to sort of separate your contacts by things that they're interested in. And you can have thousands of tags very quickly and it can be an absolute mess. So I'm so glad, again, I took that training at the start so that I could structure things right. And we still use this same document of how we structure our tags in ActiveCampaign. It's exactly the same thing as you're saying. You can actually give people the right steps from the beginning, so they're not going to be floundering and upset and then just go back to the Notes app just because they didn't get quite the right training at the start. So I think that's really valuable. And look, I'm sure there'd be very few YouTube videos about Notion coming from a music teacher either. So you're going to get that angle as well. So yes, thank you very much for putting this together. I think it's going to be so helpful for teachers. Any way that we can save time is going to be a good thing for us. So why don't we finish with some productivity tips for teachers? I don't know if you give me your top 3, aside from downloading Notion, top 3 productivity tips for the teachers listening.
Well, the first one is just something that I feel like I already mentioned at the beginning, and that's just paying attention to your personhood, to the way that you work, and just having an awareness of how things affect you in your workflow and whether it's working for you or not.
So number 2 is working smart. And I think that has to do with, yes, being efficient with your time and deciding what's going to help me get more done in less time so that, I'm spending my limited time in my life the way that I want to. I think it also includes knowing what not to do. Sometimes there's a time to realize like, oh, maybe I don't need to be doing such fancy, maybe new studio newsletters. Is there a way I can simplify this? And it might actually be not only good for me, but good for my studio families. Just to throw out an example, but so that it plays into what Amy's talking about the awareness too, just kind of realizing, how am I spending my time? How does this feel? How is this affecting everyone? And what's really best for all of us. So I think working smart would be number 2.
Yeah, simplifying. Sometimes we overcomplicate things without thinking about it.
And that leads perfectly into our number 3, which was to actually simplify your tools. So going, okay, why do I feel so frazzled? Is it because I've got stuff here, and here? I'm using all these different things to try to make things work. So can you find a way to just simplify what you're doing so that you're not so spread out? And that's why we love Notion so much, is it's because it's allowed us to simplify what we're using and get 90% of it in one place. So
you've convinced me. I'm like, okay, now I'm thinking what apps I can get rid of by using Notion as well. So what was the waitlist link again, Amy?
It was pianopantry.com/Notion wait.
Great. And then if you're on the wait list, you will email everyone when the workshop is available to register for. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And we do have an actual, if they want more details on the actual workshop, we have pianopantry.com/Notion, and they can actually check out what the workshop is like. So
fantastic. All right, we'll put that in the show notes. Thank you so much, guys, for coming on the show. You've definitely got me thinking, and I'm hoping that's the same for all our listeners out there as well. Pleasure to see you, and we'll hopefully catch up again soon.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my chat with Amy and Joy. Has it got you thinking about whether you should download Notion for free and try it out and see how much better it could be than storing all your files in various places and trying to do everything on your iPhone notes? I, for one, I've already got Family Organizer that's shared between us in an app called Cozi, Cozi. Not sure if anyone else uses that. I have Notes galore in my Notes app, and then I have Google Docs, and I have files saved on Dropbox. I mean, I have lots to learn as well, and I am going to be most definitely checking out the workshop that these guys are running, and I hope you do the same thing. One thing that we forgot to mention during the show is that Amy and Joy both have a whole lot of free resources about Notion if you'd like to check them out to get started. So she's recorded 3 or so podcasts about Notion and has a whole lot of blog articles, and Joy also has lots of blog articles about it. If you'd like to find a list of those resources, head over to our show notes, topmusic.co/episode 409, and you'll just be able to click straight through to those articles. We'll list them all on the show notes page, topmusic.co/episode 409. I hope you do that, and I look forward to seeing you at their workshop coming up. Well, that's it for the show today. Can't wait to see you again this time next week. Until then, I'm Tim Topham, and you've been listening to the Topcast. Thanks so much for spending time with me today, and I hope you're enjoying it. Speak soon. How do you keep up to date with all the latest trends and research into music education? How do you connect with other teachers around the world and make sure your teaching stays fresh and relevant for students of all ages and stages, both now and into the future? I created our Top Music Pro membership to be the one-stop shop for music teaching resources, training, support and community, and I'd love for you to come and join us inside. With over 40 comprehensive training courses, hundreds of teaching demonstrations and lesson plans, free monthly sheet music, discounts, and all the business and pedagogy support you could ever need, Top Music Pro is the community you've been looking for. If you're ready to level up your learning from the podcast and join thousands of other teachers in our global network, head over to topmusicpro.com today. If you enjoy this show and want to hear more of our work, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening today. For links and resources mentioned in this episode, visit us at topmusic.co/podcast or check out the show notes. I'm Tim Topham. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy your week ahead, and I'll catch you next time.